The story of Jacob begins long before he can walk or speak. It begins inside a tent heavy with oil and desert dust, where Rebekah kneels through pain that feels larger than her body. After years of waiting, her wound carries life, but the movements inside are fierce and unrelenting, as if two storms rage beneath her ribs. When she cries out to heaven, the answer that comes is both comfort and weight. Two nations are in her, two destinies already fighting before they breathe their first air. The elder will one day serve the younger. She carries those words like fire. Her husband Isaac listens when she tells him, but his heart leans toward order, not mystery. He trusts the customs that name the firstborn as heir, the older as leader. Rebekah, though, feels the whisper of a different truth, that the unseen hand of God often writes against the grain of men. When her labor comes, it splits the quiet of Beersheba. The first child breaks into the world red and strong, wild in his cry. They name him Esau. The second follows close behind, smaller, grasping his brother's heel with fingers already reaching for something unseen. He is Jacob, the one who grasps. Their names are prophecies in miniature. The boys grow as opposites beneath the same roof. Esau becomes a man of the open fields, the smell of earth and game always clinging to him, his laugh quick and his temper quicker. Isaac's pride rests on him like a blessing already given. Jacob moves among the tents, quiet and deliberate, eyes always studying, hands learning the rhythm of the herds and the soft speech of his mother. He listens more than he speaks, but inside him grows a restless wanting, a hunger not for food, but for favor. Rebekah sees the divide as clearly as light and shadow. She loves both sons, but her heart inclines toward Jacob, the one who looks at the world as if he already hears the echo of eternity within it. She remembers the promise made before their birth, and watches each small moment through its lens. One day Esau returns from hunting empty-handed, his strength sagging under hunger and heat. Jacob tends a pot of red stew, its scent winding through the camp. Esau demands food, careless and impatient, but Jacob's thoughts move differently. Something of the old prophecy hums through him. The birthright could change hands not by violence, but by choice, and he waits to see how lightly his brother holds it. Esau trades the unseen for the immediate, the promise for a bowl of stew. He eats, laughs, and leaves, while Jacob sits by the fire and feels victory taste strangely hollow. That night, Rebekah hears whispers among the servants of what her sons have done. The tale fills her with unease. The prophecy edges closer to fulfillment, yet its path runs through deceit instead of faith. Isaac knows nothing of it, and perhaps that is mercy, for his eyes are dim now, his mind set on passing blessing to the son who fills his tent with the scent of the hunt. Seasons pass. Isaac's hair turns silver, and his sight fades into haze. Rebekah prays more often, not for wealth or herds, but for clarity. She feels the weight of time pressing on the old man, and the fear that the blessing of God might fall on the wrong head if she stands still. One afternoon she hears Isaac calling Esau, his voice thin but determined, telling him to hunt and prepare a final meal so that the fatherly blessing can be given before death comes. Her pulse quickens. She knows the gravity of those words, how once spoken they cannot be undone. In that moment, faith and fear blur into a single force that drives her to act. She finds Jacob among the herds, his hands sifting grain, his face calm but expectant. She tells him what she has heard, her voice a mixture of command and conviction. The blessing, she insists, belongs to him. He hesitates. He fears his father's anger, fears discovery, but her certainty overwhelms his doubt. She prepares the meal herself, seasoning it as Isaac loves it, shaping the loaves soft and warm. She dresses Jacob in Esau's garments, the smell of the field thick on them, and covers his hands and neck with the skins of goats. When she steps back to look at him, her eyes carry both pride and sorrow. Jacob enters the tent of his father. The air hangs heavy with oil lamps and dust. Isaac lies on cushions, sightless eyes open toward the sound of his son's steps. His hands reach out and find roughness where smoothness should be. The voice that speaks to him does not match the texture of the skin he feels, yet his mind, longing for the familiar, accepts the lie. He eats, he drinks, and he speaks words that cannot be recalled. His blessing pours out over Jacob, like honey spilled on stone, fields abundant, nations bowing, brothers serving. When Jacob steps back into the light, the sky feels sharper, the air thin. He carries the weight of the words in his chest, but no joy rises to meet them. Something sacred has passed through deceitful hands, and the victory tastes like dust. Not long after, the camp fills with the sound of hurried footsteps and voices, breaking in confusion. Esau returns from the hunt, his arms full of game, his face bright with the triumph of the son, eager to please. He moves quickly through the tents, calling for his father, unaware that the blessing he seeks has already been given away. When Isaac hears his voice, a tremor runs through him, and the truth falls like a stone into deep water. The air changes, as if the ground itself has drawn in a breath. Esau's cry carries across the camp, raw and wounded, the sound of a man whose world has shifted beneath him. His grief burns into fury, and in that fury a vow forms. He will wait for his father to die, and then he will kill his brother. Servants whisper, the tents shudder with the tension of what cannot be undone. Rebekah hears before anyone else. Her heart breaks, but her mind stays sharp. She knows her older son well enough to fear what his anger can do. The prophecy has been fulfilled in word, but its cost comes due in blood. She calls for Jacob, pulling him into the narrow space between the tents where the wind cannot carry their words. Her hands grip his shoulders, steady but trembling. She tells him he must leave at once, travel north to her brother Laban in Haran, stay until Esau's fury cools. Her voice carries the quiet weight of command and love woven together. Jacob looks at her, eyes full of confusion and shame. He has everything he wanted, yet it feels like loss. He gathers what little he can carry, the smell of the tents and his mother's cooking already turning to memory. Rebekah presses his hands in hers and holds his gaze, as if to memorize his face before the desert steals him from sight. She prays without speaking, her lips barely moving. Then he turns toward the open land, the sun low and red across the dunes. Isaac remains in his tent, his face turned away, his body small beneath the weight of what he knows. He has no anger left, only silence. Perhaps he remembers the God who once reversed the order of things, who gave him life when Sarah's womb was dead, who chose him, the younger son of Abraham's promise. Perhaps in that memory he understands what has happened, though the understanding brings him no comfort. Jacob moves through the camp as night gathers. Every object he passes feels suddenly heavy with meaning, the familiar world folding behind him like a closing curtain. The fields that once echoed with his brother's laughter now stretch quiet and gray. The animals turn in their pens, and the smell of dust fills his lungs. He walks faster, as if distance could lighten his heart. When the last line of tents fades from view, the silence becomes immense. The stars begin to appear, one after another, cold and beautiful. The ground cools under his bare feet. His thoughts run in circles of his mother's trembling hands, of his father's fading eyes, of Esau's shout that still rings in his ears. The blessing sits on him like a weight he cannot carry. He wonders whether God has truly spoken through deceit, or whether he has stolen something sacred and turned it into sorrow. He walks until the moon rises high. The land stretches endless before him, the line of the horizon blurring into darkness. Each step carries him farther from everything known, and yet something within him, faint and stubborn, believes he is being led. The wind hums over the dunes, whispering of places yet unseen. Back in Beersheba, Rebekah lies awake, staring into the dim glow of a dying lamp. She listens to the breaths of a sleeping household and feels each one as a thread she has woven too tightly. She remembers the voice that once spoke to her when she was young, the promise that the older would serve the younger, and wonders if she has trusted too much in her own hands. The tent feels vast and empty, her husband silent beside her, her sons scattered like seed across the earth. Far ahead, Jacob stops to rest. He lays his head on a stone and closes his eyes, his body trembling from exhaustion. The night presses close, heavy and alive. He senses the edge of something vast, as if the darkness itself waits to speak. The sound of water reaches him from somewhere unseen, a quiet rhythm in the stillness. His breathing slows. The last thought that passes through his mind is not of fear or guilt, but of the voice that once told his mother he would rise. The stars wheel above him, patient and ancient. In their light, the story of inheritance and deceit comes to a close, and another story, one written in struggle and mercy, waits just beyond the horizon. The desert holds its breath as Jacob drifts into sleep, unaware that before another dawn, he will meet something that walks like a man and moves like eternity. The sand cooled under the weight of the night. Jacob's breathing slowed until it matched the rhythm of the wind. He drifted into a dream that did not feel like a dream. The plain around him seemed to fold and rise, its surface glowing faintly, and from the earth grew a ladder of light. It stretched upward without end, rooted in the dust and vanishing into stars. Shapes moved along it, forms like men clothed in brilliance, ascending and descending in steady rhythm, carrying light as if it were substance. Above the height of it all, a voice reached him, not through sound but through knowing. It was the same voice that had spoken to Abraham, that had called Isaac by name, now speaking to the wanderer who lay with his head upon a stone. It told him that the ground on which he slept was promised land, that his descendants would spread across its corners like dust scattered by wind, that through them the earth would find blessing again. It told him that he would not be left, that wherever he went, the voice would go before him and bring him home. He could not answer, only feel the weight of the promise settling on him like morning dew. The ladder of light burned brighter, and the messengers upon it paused as if watching him. One turned its face toward him, eyes vast and calm, and in that gaze Jacob saw every generation already alive in the mind of God. The ladder faded, the sky dimmed, and he woke to the cool gray before dawn. The air smelled of dust and stone. The world around him was unchanged, yet every grain of sand felt charged with meaning. He sat up slowly, pressing his palm to the stone that had cradled his head, and whispered to the silence that this place was no longer wilderness, but the house of God. He built a small pillar from nearby rocks, stacking them carefully, as if arranging memory itself. He poured oil over the top, watching it run down the sides and darken the surface. The scent rose sharp in the air, mingling with the breath of dawn. He named the place Bethel, the gate of heaven, though no gates could be seen. The name steadied him, like a thread he could follow through the vastness ahead. He made a quiet vow, not loud enough for the wind to carry, that if God would guard him on his journey and bring him home in peace, the life that came from him would belong to that same God. The sun broke the horizon then, pale at first, then fierce. Its warmth spread over him, over the pillar, over the plain that now looked less like exile and more like beginning. He felt smaller under it, but lighter, as if a burden had been lifted and replaced with purpose. He gathered his cloak, tightened the strap of his bag, and started walking. His shadow stretched long behind him, crossing the marks he had left the night before. Birds lifted from the brush, their cries sharp and sudden. The day grew around him, endless and bright. Hours passed. The land shifted from sand to rough stone, the colors deepening to ochre and gray. He drank sparingly from his skin of water and ate a small piece of bread. The taste was dry, but he found himself giving thanks aloud, half believing that someone walked beside him. A voice from the dream echoed faintly in his thoughts, its promise like a rhythm he could step to. By evening, he reached a ridge that overlooked a shallow valley. Thin trees clung to the edges, their leaves turning silver in the dying light. He stopped to rest, leaning on his staff, and for a moment thought he saw movement below only a trick of wind, or perhaps the shimmer of a string. The world seemed to hum softly, as if creation itself recognized his name. He felt fear again, but this time it did not root in guilt. It was the fear of standing close to something vast, something alive. He thought of his mother then, her voice, her tears as he left. He wondered if she still prayed for him, if his father still sat in the doorway at dusk. He knew the distance between them was now measured in more than miles. Yet even that sorrow carried a strange calm, because it belonged to a larger story now, one written in the same light that had filled his dream. As night returned, he found a place among the rocks to lie down. The stars appeared, patient and uncountable, their light older than any promise he could make. He did not sleep quickly. His thoughts wandered through the dream, through the vow, through the sound of his own breath. He understood that the journey would not be measured in days or weeks, but in years, that he would serve, wait, wrestle, and learn. Still, the fear of being lost was gone. In the quiet he spoke softly, almost to himself, that the God who had found him here in the emptiness would be his God, and that every road ahead, no matter how long, would lead through his hand. The words settled into the night like seeds buried in soil. The wind rose and fell. Far off, a jackal called once, its cry fading into distance. The plain shimmered faintly under starlight, and the pillar he had built stood small against the horizon, a single mark of oil-dark stone in a sea of sand. The world had not changed, but Jacob had. When the dawn returned, the light spread thin and gold over the hills. He stood and shouldered his pack. Behind him, Bethel waited in stillness, the place where heaven had touched earth. Ahead lay years of labor, of love, of learning how to hold both blessing and cost in the same hands. He walked into the brightness, the air warming with each step, and the dream walked with him. The sun rose higher, the shadows shortened, and his figure grew smaller against the land. The sound of his steps merged with the wind until both became one rhythm. The desert, which had begun as a place of flight, now opened like a road of promise. In time, other days would come, other nights, other voices. He would become a husband, a father, a shepherd of men and herds. He would build, lose, strive, and grow old. But this morning would stay within him like a stone hidden under soil, the memory of when the unseen became near and mercy wore the shape of light. And though he could not yet know it, the path that stretched before him would one day lead him back to this land, to another night beside another river, where the same voice would meet him again, not in a dream, but in the flesh, to finish what had begun beneath the stars.